welcome to DC Conversations. I thought before we actually get into the interview, you could tell us something about Ziroh Labs.
So Ziroh Labs is a very pioneering company, and it was started about 6-7 years ago. And the initial focus was on solving encryption problems in security. The holy grail of security is that if you can compute on encrypted data, then the entire world will be very safe.
Yeah.
And that requires a very ground-up thinking because it questions every assumption that we have so far, right? So Rishi, our founder, started with that, and he produced what is called as a fully homomorphic encryption, in short known as FHE. And that effort went on for some time, and they were very successful at it. And while making that effort, because the main background of most of the practitioners at Ziroh Labs is mathematics, they realized that AI is also based on mathematics, and they started to focus more on the AI. And this effort that you see on AI started 2 to 3 years ago, and it has now reached to a point where we have a product that we can take to the market.
You also have the Kompact AI, right? How exactly is this different from the AI systems most companies use today?
What question really is, what is AI? And AI has this thing called large language model, which is, if you imagine a very large book, suppose it is a sum of all the books and knowledge in the universe, and you have concentrated that at some place. That is what a large language model is. And there are two flavors of large language models. One that is closed source. What I mean by closed source is ChatGPT, Claude. These are examples of closed source AI models that we cannot see or touch them, but we can poke them. So just like the revolution that you saw in last many decades that happened in the open source world is now being replicated in the AI industry also, right? It first started with Facebook and Meta releasing a model called Llama in 2023. And that was the start of opening up of the models for the common people. Right? I could take that model from Llama, from Meta, and I could run it on my system myself, right, without talking to OpenAI. Since then, an amazing amount of revolution has been taking place in the AI models. And very surprisingly, it has come from China. China has released DeepSeek model, which was quite revolutionary because from the very start, it demonstrated that it could give performance as good as ChatGPT, right? And then another company from China called Alibaba also started producing a model called Qwen, QWEN, and these models are also extremely good and different jobs that they can perform, right? So what you are seeing is that it's a democratization of AI models that is starting to happen, right? I will tell you a small story. A very long time ago, there was a guy called Alexander Graham Bell. He invented a device called telephone. He initially invented this device to actually solve his very rich friend's problem, because these rich people had factories outside the city and they wanted some way of communicating with their wife, when they're out in their factory, right? So he was solving a rich person's problem. And if you see that technology is initially invented for the very rich, because the research funding comes from the very rich. And then over time, technology democratizes. it starts to become mainstream. It starts to become commoditized. And what a revolution it was, the telephone itself revolutionized America itself, before the telephone came in, women were not in the work stream, for example, in America, right? And because of telephone, they came in. So I'm digressing a little bit, but what I'm trying to say here is that when OpenAI came up with their AI, it was based on a very inefficient model. And once Meta and Facebook opened it up, you know,
Mm.
entire world had the opportunity to improve these models, make them more cost efficient, right? And that is the journey that we are seeing with open source models, right? Uh, all people from all countries now are very busy training models on the domain of their choice, right? For example, in India, now what we are doing in some quarters, for example, take Ayurveda, they are actually fine tuning these open source models with Ayurvedic dictionaries, with Ayurvedic knowledge, right? Now, there is no model in the world, Reshmi, that will actually talk like Indian culture, right? Most of the models are trained on the data that is available publicly on the internet.
Yeah, correct.
So whoever has produced this data, and data has been mostly produced by the Western world, you know. So the language, the culture, the tone of these models also is very much Western-like, you know. And hence, it may be a threat to some countries as well, because model may be giving suggestions, but is not really right for your culture, you know.
Yeah.
So a great deal of work is happening around the world in producing small models that are open, that anybody can train them, and in a particular domain, right? Now, when people use ChatGPT can answer anything, and that suits them well because their customers are ordinary consumers all over the world, right? But as you can understand, industry is not like that. Industry is very focused on their domain, healthcare, finance, you know, banking, insurance. All of these are very domain specific areas. We don't need a model that has read the entire books of the world. We need a model that is very relevant for that industry, right? So that is the shift that is happening now. And with open source coming in, you know, the efficiency is getting better and better. So Ziroh Labs is actually counting on the fact that open source as a movement is now deeply progressing, and all the nations are standing up to these very expensive models and are now making an effort to democratize AI in their respective areas.
Could you explain a little more about how exactly this technology will make AI more affordable for smaller companies?
Yes. So when the AI was first designed, and it was not so long ago, it was just in 2016-18 timeframe, right? They found that they could rely on GPU for the calculations. Now, the predominant mathematical operation that happens inside AI is the multiplication of two matrices. And at that particular time, GPU was the only processor available for actually computation of matrices. Hence, for some years, people continued to produce AI models that could run only on the GPUs. Now, as we all know, rest of the applications in our infrastructure, the mobile phone that you have, the laptop that you have at home, everything runs on CPU, right?
Yeah.
And CPUs are very good at it, right? Because we all use it, right? If you look at our country, we will have, let's say, 100 CPUs, and maybe we don't even have 0.001 GPU in our country, right? So it was an accidental architecture that GPU came to be, right? Now, because of that one problem that I said, where CPUs could not multiply two matrices effectively, Intel, AMD, Qualcomm, and others Ampere, for example, they all have upgraded their CPUs to support matrix multiplication now,
Mm.
right? And because they have done that, Ziroh Labs has made an effort to run these models on CPU, right? Now we all understand that GPUs are terribly expensive, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so much expensive that they are sometimes 2x or 3x the times of CPU. That is one problem. The second problem is the power supply that you need. You know, if you are going to run GPU at home, for example, what you will find is that your electricity bill will easily double or triple, right?
Mm.
Now, you would be very unhappy that you bought a GPU, but your electricity doubled, right? So the operational expenses also very high, right? Now, this is a cause of serious concern for a developing country like India, because
Mm.
we simply do not have that much electrical power to actually power these GPUs, right? So CPUs, on the other hand, continue to function the way they function now, and they also support matrix multiplication. So we have been working very closely with Intel in making these models available and run them as efficiently on CPU as they are running on GPU. Right? So that is what Ziroh Labs is doing. And as our chief technologist, Dr. Whitfield Diffie, has stated, that this will lead to a tremendous democratization of AI across the different parts of the world.
Mm.
Doesn't matter whether it is India, China, Europe, Africa, everybody needs an efficient computing power, right? If all the power that we have, that we use for homes and water supplies and whatnot, if all of that is going to be driven towards AI, running AI, then it's a tremendous cost that any country is going to pay for it. Also, we have to understand that the market, the way it is evolving, some of these companies are becoming like oligarchies. They are completely dominating this
Mm.
space, right? And history has shown us that whenever such a dominance happens, then rest of the world reacts to it and finds more sustainable way of running things. you know
Yeah.
and that revolution is starting now. In last 1 year, we have seen the growth of so many models, so many initiatives from everywhere. And under our Indian government schemes also, many efforts at IIT Mumbai and IIT Madras are also giving shape to produce models that are unique for Indian environments, Indian culture, Indian languages, right, and are very useful for our citizens. So we think that this effort will grow even further and it will become more mainstream. You know.
How do you think, Compact AI could help industries like, education, healthcare in more practical ways?
Let's take education, for example, right? One of the challenges we face as parents is that children go to school and they learn something and they get homework. The hard part in school education is to do that homework.
Mm.
And many times homework is done by the mothers, you know, right? Now, why that happens? Suppose you do the homework, then the real challenge is that is the teacher having the time to correct your papers?
Mm.
I hear this problem at school as well as in big universities. You know, teachers simply don't have the time to give student a feedback, on the work that they have been doing. Right? Take this very simple example. Right? Now, what you can do using AI is that you will have a teacher 24 hours available to you. You can take that question and you can
Mm.
ask it in any language, Tamil, Kannada, what have you, right? And it will explain it over and over to you. That is one. Secondly, when you do the homework, you can take a picture of your homework, a screenshot, and you can upload it to AI. And AI will be able to find faults with it or tell you what is wrong, right? Now that is a very meaningful way of learning, right? Suddenly we have AI available 24 hours as a teaching assistant to all our
True,
students,
true.
right? And regardless of what language background they come from, you know,
Yeah.
many times our students, our engineers suffer because they just don't know some English language, you know.
Mm.
And it is a problem that has remained unsolved for many decades now, right? If you go into your small towns where you might have studied, you will find that you had brilliant companions at high school level who studied very good mathematics. And just because they didn't know some English, they were not put to any good use, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that is going to change now, right? What we need is that curious mind who can ask questions, you know, and with young children, it is very good because they ask anything, you know, so they can talk to AI as much as they want, right? Now the second question domain that you asked was healthcare, you
Mm.
know. So healthcare is somewhat more challenging, but let me discuss some efforts that are going on. Uh, One is actually to capture the patient and the doctor conversation. Today, when we go meet a doctor, the problem is that that conversation, let's say whatever it happens for 5 minutes, there is no record of it.
Mm.
The patient also forgets, the doctor also forgets. So there are various efforts going on in India to transcribe that conversation. The second good example is that your health records, for example, your X-ray, your CT scan, right, can now be analyzed by AI, right? And we can store a record of how your X-ray was changing over the period of years. And we don't have any system of record right now to
Mm.
actually understand any of these things, right? But in healthcare, there is a problem also that we see today, even now with the internet, that people go and ask questions about medicines and they get some answers, and
Yeah.
sometimes without consulting the doctor, they take these medicines, right? So, so there could be a prevention now because with AI, we have to build some more filters and give an advice with a clear transparency that we may not know everything, right? But the other challenge is that there are villages in India where we don't have doctors, right? So AI, if it gets to that point where it can communicate fluently in our languages, Indian languages, then AI doctor can also be available 24/7, right, to
True.
anybody
Yeah.
for consultation.
Yeah.
And the advantage is that, okay, you can have the initial consultation with an AI doctor, and over time, then a real doctor will start to see you, right?
Mm. Mm.
So I think this might change the behavioral dynamics of how in India we meet with doctors and how we consult. You know, Another interesting area is mental health. You know,
Mm.
Mental health. The challenge is that people don't open up sometimes. And sometimes you need a system which the person can confide in, and is a safe place for him to talk about his issues. So I suspect that there are efforts, and it should become possible to create a safe place for people to talk about their challenges and receive some very good advice. So these kind of systems will take time to evolve because this is just the very start of AI. But we are going to see dramatic changes in all of these areas in times to come.
One last question. Ziroh Labs also collaborated with IIT Madras, right? So how did that project and collaboration actually, what role did it play in making Compact AI possible?
So uh, IIT Madras and Ziroh Labs have set up this Center for Artificial Intelligence Research, and the reason for that is that no one person can do it all. No, we need a more research-oriented companies at the moment. Otherwise, we will fall behind. You know, and IIT Madras is a great place where people are coming up with very innovative ideas and which has mathematical rigor and deep knowledge to actually help us in the industry with these things, right? AI is a very young field even now. So IT Madras, first of all, validated what Ziroh Labs has produced. And we are working towards developing more models that will support Indian languages, Indian culture, Indian science, Indian agriculture, in various aspects, this cooperation is happening. And more importantly, we are eliminating GPUs. Right now, IT Madras can do all their research on the CPU itself. And along with it, there is also a sincere effort to take this AI into our Indian defense, because Indian defense has varieties of needs in terms of what they want to do with AI, And a good example are deepfake technologies, to be able to distinguish between fake news reporting and finding out what is real, because all kinds of, media is filled with all kinds of things sometimes, and if Indian defense is looking at those things, also from the national security, we can improve the cyber security as well. So there are multiple dimensions of how this could be used, and IIT Chennai, Ziroh Labs, and some efforts that are going on in IT Mumbai, all of these are very, very meaningful towards advancing the AI and leading us to a more self-reliant AI. We badly need it, actually. Sustainability is another big issue. So recently you might have heard of some announcements in some states of India where people from US will come and open gigawatt data centers. But we should also think, what happens to where will we get this electricity from, at whose expense it is going to come from. So a sustainable AI, sustainable computing, all of these things, and making a difference to an Indian citizen's life. I think that's the goal behind our collaboration with IIT Chennai.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Reshmi. Very nice to connect with you.